welcome back to our show. This is the Debate on Premier League Preview Show. Well, which PL team or which Premier League team needs European football the most next season? Big question, Susu.
I think for me, the answer is very simply Aston Villa.
Why?
They spent a lot of money. As it stands, per their last financial statements, their wages are 91% of their revenue. So that's before other expenses. So that's before you account for transfer expenditure, you account for other associated costs that come. I'm talking about just player wages. Player payroll is 91%. You account for how much you pay your manager,
the backroom staff,
how much it costs to maintain your pitch, your stay. Look, running a football club is not cheap.
True.
But if you are spending that much money on just wages, before transfer fees, before everything, so that means all your TV money, your sponsorship, your gate receipts, your transfer income, 91% of all of that money is on player wages. That's a very untenable financial situation. So for me, if they don't get Champions League football, they're in a big financial hole because the gap between the Europa League and the Conference League and the Champions League in terms of financials is so big that it's not sustainable. It means you have to get rid of some of your players. And look at how well they've done. So it looks like maybe someone like Oli Watkins, they are now going to try and get some 40, 50 million for him. You probably might not be able to retain Marcus Rashford.
Oh, they won't retain him.
Yeah.
With the hamstring and all.
But I'm saying if they had got the Champions League, they might think to themselves that, okay, let's retain him and let's see what happens. You can't retain him because he's on 300,000 a week. Is he going to take a pay cut to come to your club?
That's it.
You look at someone like Emi Martinez, someone might think, this is a top player you might want to play for us. You look at, you have a lot of interesting players in this team. Yuri Telemans has had a good season. Some other team might think, oh, we want him. And that's what's going to hurt them the most. Because once you get rid of some of these players who are playing very well, key players, next season, qualifying for the Champions League is even harder. Because are you able to replace them adequately? Is there someone in the squad who can step up? All of these questions. And they've spent a lot of money on transfer fees, actually. Aston Villa spent a lot of money. I think they're about where you expect for a team that spends their money, which is why Steven Gerrard's performance was so unimpressive. Because the team was spending money. He could not get anything out of them. So, for me, Aston Villa by a mile. I believe where their project is, without Champions League football, the project falls apart. And Emery might ask himself questions: am I being backed? Should I go somewhere else? So, Champions League football, there's a lot hinges on it for them, especially. I think the honourable mention would be Ange Postecoglou because clearly, if he doesn't win, there's no more job for him. I think it's win or go home. Basically, he should have his resignation, not a resignation letter, because if he resigns, they won't pay him. So Tottenham will probably have a sack letter ready, depending on their final. So, if they don't win their final, they just give him the letter coolly and say, thank you very much for your time. It's time to go. So those two guys, but I'll say Aston Villa more so because there's more games, more moving parts. So for them, look, the Chelsea-Newcastle game is a godsend because someone is dropping points and they can make up the gap.
Interesting. Which PL team needs, that European football the most this season?
I think it's Chelsea.
So
I think it's Chelsea.
You don't agree with it?
Yeah, I think with Aston Villa, I don't see them qualifying to the Champions League, so they can kiss that goodbye. But once you kiss that goodbye, how do you deal with the finances that come from that fallout from missing out on the Champions League? I think it's pretty much straightforward. They have two options, not two options. Two ways of getting stable when it comes to their finances. One, you let go of Marcus Rashford, you don't retain him. Number two, you sell Morgan Rogers. He is the most valuable player in the team, and once you sell him, you get a lot of money from that sale to be able to balance the books. And Aston Villa have done it before. They've shown that they can go for a young player for cheap, but get him to play to the top level, the way Morgan Rogers has done. I mean, how much money did they spend on Morgan Rogers whilst he was out of the Man City academy? They didn't spend more than even £5 million on him, and now look at his value. And so I think with their scouting, they can get it right, and so they can let him go and scout for a player who will come on the cheap, but who will give them top level production. And on top of that, they can do without Morgan Rogers because they have players in that midfield who can more or less duplicate what Morgan Rogers has been able to do for them. I mean, you look at that midfield, they have quite a large personnel, and they have Jacob Ramsey, who is more like a mini Morgan Rogers in there. So I think they can find a way of addressing that issue once they miss out on the Champions League. I don't see them qualifying to the Champions League. So if I'm to pick the team that really needs to qualify to the Champions League, it has to be Chelsea, because Enzo Maresca, his future rides on it, and the project needs to take a step forward, because it looked like he had taken a step forward in the first part of the season where they were contending for a title.
That's so true.
But now it looks like they've backtracked and they might just end up missing out on the Champions League. So they needed to give them that bit of stability, because that Todd Bowley era started on a rocky note. There hasn't been too much stability in the coaching personnel and the player personnel. You start off, you bring in Graham Potter, you sack him, you bring in Mauricio Pochettino, then the next moment you let him go. Everyone thinks that you're going to retain Pochettino, then you let him go, you bring in Maresca. There needs to be stability on that front, and now that you provide a little bit of stability on the player personnel, and if they miss out on the Champions League, per their standards, they are likely to sack him.
Great.
And so they need the Champions League to ensure that their project takes that stable footing, and that their project takes that next step to ensure that, yes, we can attract a lot more players who can help us get to that elite level, where this time around we know that, yeah, we are contending for the title and we are part of that Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City group.